Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. I'm your host, Zack Hewlett. Jack Bryce will be along here shortly, and we're excited. Today, our guest is Robert Anderson. Robert, tell us where in the world you're calling us from today.
So I'm calling from Huntsville, Alabama. It's actually a little suburb outside of it. But yeah, enjoying a little bit of cooler fall weather finally
Yeah,
versus all the heat and humidity here in the South. So
very cool. Well, in our conversation before, you said you've been watching these. You understand the format a little bit.
yeah,
We'll talk.
absolutely.
We'll talk pre-mission. We'll jump the mission and talk life since, and then we'll go back through Scotland, companions, areas you served in, things like that. But the floor is yours. Go ahead, and
Yeah.
we're excited to hear from you.
Yeah. So definitely always, you know, my dad went on a mission, definitely was always in the cards. For me, I've got an August birthday. And so I started school when I was like 6. So I graduated and I was almost 19. And I think the big discussion in my house was like, my dad was like, you need to go to college for a year before you go. And my mom was like, you need to go just out of high school. So I ended up, you know, putting in my papers. I think it was right before I graduated. Um, the stake clerk in my stake, which by the way, the stake I grew up in northern Nevada.
Okay.
My stake that I grew up in was physically larger than Scotland. It's a huge stake. I mean, my dad was a high counselor, and I remember he there was one branch that was 5.5 hours away.
Wow.
That he would go and do. So um, when I turned my papers in, I think the state clerk was going to the church office building, so they're like, "Oh, we'll just hand deliver it," and uh, that was not a good idea because it took forever. I think it took like 4 weeks,
Oh
six
no.
weeks, something like that. So I think wherever they hand delivered it, it got. I don't know what happened. Um,
Go through the right processes. It sounds like.
yeah, yeah. So get it. We do the whole. Get all the family together, open it up. I'm sure I said Edinburgh or something like that. Was excited. I'd kind of wanted foreign but English speaking, so I was like, great, this is awesome.
Yeah, bang
Um,
on right there.
yeah, yeah. So, and I think that was that was still like I think it was like mid to late July, and I didn't report to the Preston MTC until like the 27th of November.
Holy cow, that's a
And
long
so
time.
it was a huge wait. I'm like, man, I could have got like a semester in, but not quite. Um, and I think like the big thing that happened to me there is, I mean, I was just kicking around. Grew up in a tiny town of like 3,000 people. After high school, there's nothing to do, right? The thing to
Yeah.
do is leave. Um, and so I remember the ward found that there was like this construction job, and he's like, hey, you should join it. And I'm like, cool. The first day I reported for the construction job was September 11th, 2001. So
Oh wow.
it was a bit of a crazy day.
Yeah.
But anyway, the next day, the second day on the job, I'm sitting there working. I put in like 10 hours, never done construction before. I'm exhausted. My new boss is like, hey, I need you to help me with this large piece of equipment that we need to get ready for transport. And so I'm doing this stuff. I'm on this elevated catwalk, and it ends up that I get my foot crushed, like the front part of my foot crushed in this equipment.
Oh,
Um, it,
jeez.
and it could have been so much worse than it was.
Uh-huh.
But it was like this 150-foot long conveyor belt. It ended up like popping my toenails off. There was so much pressure, and it
Whoa.
broke one toe. But it was one of those events that you think back on it and you're like, I could have lost the first, third of my foot.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a big, like, oh my gosh. But thankfully, I didn't have any lasting effects other than a couple weeks of being tender with my foot. Um,
Yeah.
so
And I'm thinking too, like the time frame to heal. Did you have enough time to
Yeah,
get
I
right
mean,
out on the mission at that point then?
yeah, I had enough time. I mean, it was basically just my toe was kind of healing up. I think I actually went to a doctor in my first area, and because I was the doctors in the States were like, you need to get this checked out at like 6 months or something. And the doctor in my first area was like, you need to go to I can't do anything for you. Go to the hospital. And I'm like, I've been doing like 12 miles a day on this. You guys know, like, missionary feet.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty picture, but I'm like, I'm doing fine. So that was kind of the end of it. But it was just one of those, like, it felt like there was some opposition, and thankfully it wasn't. It was just a crazy scenario. I hadn't signed a lick of paperwork either when that had happened. I was like, oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
goodness.
But it worked out. And I was able to get on the mission. It was nice. It was right after Thanksgiving. It was like the Monday after Thanksgiving I flew out. So I mean,
That's good.
that was kind of the big adventure before the mission.
Yeah.
Afterwards, got to that small town, and I think adjusting after a mission is one of the most difficult things. I just felt like at home in my parents' home, not doing anything for anyone. I felt like a slob. But I quickly, the town I grew up in is about an hour and a half away from Reno. That's where I went to the University of Nevada, Reno.
Okay.
So thankfully, it was about a month later, I was at school, studying there. Uh, I think they had 2 or 3 singles wards at the time, in the Reno area. Uh, and you know, I have 2 older sisters. I know the closing, interview with the mission president, at least the one that I got was, go home and get married before you get into trouble. um,
That sounds like President Brains.
yeah. And I'm like, oh man, my whole life I've been listening to women tell me what to do between my older sisters and my mom. And I just wanted to get home and kind of live on my own for a little bit. But, met my wife going to school there. We got married. So that was January of '04. We ended up getting married in December of '05. Um, Basically, worked while I went to school. I got in. I used my missionary skills for evil. I feel sometimes I got a job as a telemarketer. Um, my rationale
And there.
behind it was it was a business to business telemarketer, so I wasn't calling people at home. At least that was my rationale. But right, as a missionary, you learn these skills on how to talk and interact. I wasn't on the phones for too long, and I got kind of promoted and did some stuff with ERP systems, which are enterprise resource management systems like the Oracles and SAP systems. Got my degree in dual major in economics and finance from UNR. Thought about trying to get into the to BYU to get an MBA. Yeah, kicked it around a little bit. Ultimately, well, I guess I should say so we got married in '05, graduated in May of '08, which is also the month that my first child was born, my son Caden. And then I had a cousin. So I had an uncle that worked for the State Department, and he did recruiting for a number of years. And he found out about a fellowship program that the U.S. Army does, or used to do. They don't do it anymore. And I applied to that, and I got in. And it was basically a 5-year program where they pay for your MBA the first year, and then they kind of automatically promote you. And it's as a civil servant. So I'm a federal employee that works for the Army. I'm not a green suiter or an active duty person. So in doing that, I went to Texarkana, Texas for about 18 months, got my MBA from Texas A&M, Texarkana, which is in the Texas A&M system. Not as illustrious as Texas A&M though, but
You think conversation's a little different than Texarkana?
Yeah. So, I mean, depending on who I'm talking to, I can just say the Texarkana part really fast,
Yeah.
Texas A&M, Texarkana. Um, so after that, so part of that program is they kind of owned me for 5 years, and they treated me a little bit like an active duty person. So they assigned me to Redstone Arsenal, which is here in North Alabama in the Huntsville area. And I was working on some ERP type stuff with the Army, mainly focusing on financial transactions. So I was there for a while. When we got to Huntsville, we had two girls, Kelsey and Lucy. So they're 12 and almost 10. And then I had an opportunity actually to get a job back west at an Army installation just north of Reno, Nevada. So I went there for about a year and a half, and then I had a good friend that was working as a civilian for the Army in Germany, who said, "You really need to come over here," and I couldn't pass up, working for the government in Germany. So we spent about 2 years over in Germany, and was actually able to get back to Scotland on a trip. We were expecting to stay a little bit longer than 2 years, so I didn't get a whole bunch of time in Germany or in Scotland again. But I was able to do some Edinburgh trips and go to Stirling and some of that stuff. So it was awesome. It was also really cool just living in Central Europe and going to Paris, going to the Netherlands, going to Austria. It was amazing. Um, After that, I had an opportunity to go back to the installation near Reno, Nevada, and I actually got a promotion to act as the CFO for the installation. Was there for about another 2 years. If you get a sense here that I can't stay in one place, and I had an opportunity to come back to Huntsville and get another promotion, and now I work for a part of it's called Army Materiel Command. They do the logistics for the Army. You may have heard of. I know one of you guys works for Lockheed Martin or one of the defense contractors. So very similar to the Air Force Materiel Command, doing all the logistics, but on the Army side. And currently, I manage. I'm on a team that oversees about 100,000 civilian positions that work for my organization and subordinate organizations all over the world. So it's a pretty cool job. Right now it's fiscal year end, so it's a little stressful trying to put out fires and figure out stuff. I guess I should say we had the reason why we left Germany a little bit early. We got a little bonus baby over in Germany. One of the main things when people go to Germany, it happens a lot that they have a baby. So Madison, our fourth, she was born, and she's 3. So got a full contingent at the Anderson household of kids, and just enjoying life. Really enjoy the Huntsville area. It's a great area. It's not what I envisioned. Being from Nevada, when someone says Alabama, it's not anything like what you think. But yeah, it's like definitely, and I can get into this more, but I definitely see the mission as a pivotal point in my life that gave me skills that I've been able to use in my professional life that have enabled me to go very far. So definitely a great time.
Love it. Well, cool. That's quite a journey. Holy cow.
I know. I think we moved like 6 times or 5 times in 5 years, and 2 of them were, out of the United States international, and then international back into the States. I'm sick of moving.
I don't blame you. Been there, done that myself.
Yeah. So now the mission, right? So
yeah, take us back to even the MTC back. You said November 2001, and go from there.
Yeah. So first thing, being a Nevada kid, right? I was like, holy crap! There is so much green around here. There's as much green here as there's brown in Nevada. So that was the main thing. It was an interesting time. So when we got there it was 2 months after September 11th. First thing they kind of said to us is, "Congratulations, you're the largest concentration of Americans in northern England." So it was, I mean, security, they were worried about security. So, I mean, it was pretty locked up tight. But I enjoyed the MTC. I was ready to get out
Yeah.
and kind of go. Um, I think we had and I can't remember, we had a pretty sizable group, I think maybe 10 or so that were going to Scotland. Um, I actually got to serve with one of the guys that was in my group, and I actually got to serve with him at the end of the mission, which was very strange. um, but I guess the main thing is when we went to leave the MTC, uh, and we went to the train station, and they said, "Well, there's railroad strikes going on in Scotland." So we can't put you on a train all the way up to Scotland. We're going to put you on a train to get you to more northern England, and then you're going to take a bus.
Oh, wow.
So we got in a little bit later than normal, um, and I don't think we did any chapping because of that. They were doing some of the other administrative stuff, um, and obviously, I know a lot of people have said this, but definitely, starting your mission off on Pratt's Hill, amazing experience. Um, so when I got to the mission home, President Wilkinson, he assigned me to a missionary. His name is Elder Snow, Neil Snow. He had a pretty interesting. I think he was supposed to go to the Czech Republic on his mission, so he went to the Provo MTC, spent a lot of time learning the language, and then his visa never came through. So he spent part of his mission, I think, in Orlando, and then he was offered S.E.M for the other half. So, right, you're in Orlando, and they say you can go to Scotland. You made the right choice, right? Um, and man, that boy knew how to work. Um, he was an amazing, probably the most amazing finder of people prepared to hear the gospel that I ever interacted with. But it's because he did the work. I mean, I I lost 2 stone in about 8 weeks with him
Holy.
because we were doing his goal was we're doing 76, 77 hour weeks, no lunch, no dinner. We're doing, on P day, we're doing the bare minimum, and then we're proselyting. And it was we're going to go find people. So the area we were assigned was Govan in Glasgow.
Mm.
Ibrox Stadium was a part of the area. And it was a rough area, rough area. Um, just to tell you a story of I was literally offered every drug known to man as a missionary in this area. So just to tell you a story, when I was dating my wife in, I think it was 2007, I was, Jack Johnson, he had a concert in Reno, and I took my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, to the concert, and we're sitting there, and it's an outdoor amphitheater, and we're listening to the music, and I'm just thinking of Scotland. I cannot, my brain is being bombarded with Scotland, and I'm trying to figure out why. Because I didn't listen to, I mean, Jack Johnson was I think he had become a thing right when I got home. And I'm like, then I realized not too far away from me, people were smoking weed. And I had so much secondhand exposure to, I probably would have failed the drug test because we were just surrounded by it. And, you go into someone's home and you can ask them to put it out, or even in their doorstep, but it's their home. So that's how much it was. I mean, heroin, everything. Like, we were offered everything. Um, but this Elder Snow, my companion, we worked and we worked, and man, we had so much success. I think our goal was like 3 discussions a day, every day of the week, and we met it. When we got to the point where we were consistently meeting it, and it was just, I mean, I think there were 8 or 9 tall flats in that area, and right, so it's January, February, it's disgusting outside. You're a missionary. Oh yeah, you're going to go to those high flats, and you're going to be happy that you're inside. But I mean, our teaching pool was just insane, and we saw so much success in finding people. Um, but then, you know, Elder Snow, it was his last 3 months on his mission, and so I kind of knew I had him for 3 months, and so I'm sitting there. I'm a greenie. I've only experienced this hardcore. You know, this is how we do it, and Um, my second companion was Elder Mark Baines. He's from England, and he had a different philosophy. um, and there was a little bit of there. I wouldn't say there was quite a bit of headbutting that happened on that, because even as a greenie, if you kind of quasi act as a senior companion the first little bit, because you know who the people are, you know what's going on. But I will tell you, um, I mean, I struggled a lot with that, but I will tell you, he was absolutely the uh, the the best missionary for that area and for me at that time. Because although he did not like do the hardcore finding of people, man, he could make relationships, and without him, we wouldn't have seen. So we saw a lot of baptisms because of that combination of finding and then shifting to the, like, I'm gonna really connect with these people, um, and I'll say maybe not focus so much on the numbers, right? Focus on the person and teaching the gospel. And I mean, they're just, we saw a couple that got baptized, and it was the husband that it was a Thomas Brown was his name. He was interested in the gospel, and his wife never gave us the time of day. But we kept challenging him, and he was reading the Book of Mormon. Well, we later find out that he couldn't read the Book of Mormon because he was in poor health, and his wife would read it to him. Well, that's just a perfect scenario, because we said, hey, you got to come to his baptism. And we were doing baptisms after, church services on Sunday at that time. And so we said, well, your husband's getting baptized, so you got to come to church before you go to baptism. She walked out of Relief Society, which was the first meeting at that time. And the first thing she says to me is, I want to get baptized. I'm like, all right,
Wow.
I can help you with that. And I mean, we had some amazing. There was a family there that did some amazing member missionary work. It was the Barclay family. Their son's girlfriend was interested in the gospel, and they came to us, and we basically taught her the 6 discussions. At the end of the 6 discussions, we said, I'm not going to allow you to get baptized unless you ask us at least one question. Because she would just ask the family. I don't think I knew her last name until they did the baptismal interview. It was just, they were the perfect member missionary family, where we literally were just there teaching the gospel, and they were filling in the questions and all that stuff. So, but it was, I mean, in looking back, I've been reading a few of my journals, and I have so many entries in there of, oh, so-and-so investigator got mugged the other day. Or so-and-so investigator had someone break into their flat the other day. Like, it was a rough area, but I can tell you, like, I never felt like I was in danger. And it, like, So one day we were walking behind Ibrox Stadium, which is where the Rangers play. And I think in Glasgow, you guys know the underground in Glasgow. It's just a big donut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's like maybe 10 stations. Well, like 4 or 5 of the stations were in my area, which was super convenient. So we get out of the underground one day, and it's not unusual to see a large police presence near Ibrox, especially during the games, right? When Rangers and Celtics play, you just you pray for a draw, right? Because there's less burned out cars, there's less stabbings, there's less bricks. It's just you pray for that. But it wasn't a game day, and we walk out, and there is a heavy police presence in this lot behind Ibrox. And so we had an investigator at the street. We go up to him and say, "Hey, Flo, what's going on? Like, why are there so many police here?" "Oh, well, they found a human leg in that lot." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is insane." But I definitely know I was protected so much in that area, and that combination of my trainer and then my second companion, I think, giving me a well balanced missionary skills. It's not all about the numbers, but and connecting with the people, really teaching the gospel. I think it really set me off really well on my mission. So I was there for 6 months, 3 months with each of them.
Wow.
And then President Wilkinson called me up. He said, "So I'm gonna have you train." So I was going junior to senior trainer, and then we're going to open up an area. So I was whitewashing as well. So I was a little bit nervous in my own head. I'm a little bit cerebral as it is, right? So I'm in my head. So I get to the mission home. We're doing the trainer stuff. Meet the greenies, and I get paired up with Trevor Watson. Was the first guy I trained. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, we can do this, right? President Wilkinson, he pulls me aside. He's like, "Elder Anderson, I need to tell you something, because I don't know if Elder Watson will tell you if I don't." His dad is the secretary to the first presidency.
Yeah.
So
the guy
then
who
in my
gets up in
head,
general conference to read the statistical report,
yeah,
right?
F. Michael Watson. Yeah. In my head, I'm thinking, I am going to mess up so hard, and President Hinckley is going to know about it. Like, this is awesome. So that was how it started. I love Trevor Watson. He is an amazing, amazing guy. So the area that we actually were whitewashing is it was in Fife. So it was I think it was called Cooper because that's where we got the flat, but it covered St. Andrews and St. Andrews University. So we go in there. Obviously, there's no flat in the area. We go into the zone leaders in Dundee flat, which was difficult because they just had the tiny college fridge, and I don't know how that's supposed to work for 4 elders. I got sick for a while too. I was sick for like 2 or 3 weeks right after that. So, man, Elder Watson, he put up with a little bit first getting on his mission, because I know when I got on my mission, I was homesick, and the best thing for me was just getting out and working. And it was just logistically, it was difficult because it would be, a 20-minute walk down the steepest hill ever in Dundee to get to the train station, a 45-minute train ride to get to Lukers, which is the train station closest to St. Andrews, and then another 30-minute ride if you were going into actual St. Andrews itself. So, I mean, it's like, by the time, it's at least 2 hours to get there. So we kind of pivoted a little bit. Cooper is a small town in Fife that actually is, you can get to there with just one bus. I think you can get there with a train too. Yeah, you can. And we were in the, what's that building in Dundee? Come on. Look, we were in the Steak Center.
Bingham Terrace.
Yeah, Bingham. Yeah. So that's where we were. And there's an amazing family, in Cooper, the Campbells. And they were amazing. So he owned some apartments. And we ended up getting into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment above a Chinese food shop, which was kind of torture sometimes. This tiny, like our beds were like less than a foot apart in this tiny 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor that would shake when our washer and dryer was spinning. Right. So, but that was an amazing area, completely different from Govan, in Scotland. And we got to work there. I think the coolest thing that happened, well, there's a few cool things that happened. So we were there on St. Andrew's Day. And so you've got that Royal and Ancient Clubhouse in St. Andrews. That's open one day a year to the general public, and it's on St. Andrew's Day. So we obviously went through and enjoyed all the, solid gold golf clubs and the history of golf. I'm not a golfer, but it was cool, right? Got plenty of pictures on the old course. But during that time, there was a pretty famous person that went to St. Andrews, Prince William. So he was there, and I can't tell you how many times. I never saw him, but we'd always go places, and people would be like, dude, I just saw Prince William like 10 minutes ago. You missed him just barely. So
after you were there, the missionaries ended up teaching his roommates.
That's cool. So I actually had an experience, and that was with Elder Watson, great guy. After him, so I had him for 3 months, and then I trained David Lehman, from Germany, but he grew up in East Germany. Cool story about him. I mean, like it was really cool for me to have him as a companion, because he knew textbook English, right? But he didn't know any of the slang or the phrases, be them American or Scottish. And so he'd like take the literal meaning of all these phrases. And then I would always catch myself. He'd be like, "What does that mean?" And I couldn't describe it to him without using the words. So it was an interesting introspection on, what we use for language. But we were walking around one day, and I was just very interested, because he's like a 5th generation member from East Germany. His when the wall went up, his family, they were, the church was strong and still going. And so one day I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, even smaller than the town I left. So I was trying to compare childhoods with him living in East Germany, with me living in middle of nowhere, Nevada. And like on all of the metrics, like TV station, radio stations, proximity to grocery stores, he had it better in East Germany than I had it in middle of nowhere, Nevada. And I'm like, that's not right. But going back to, there were quite a few interesting people we tracked into in St. Andrews. So there's a school of divinity there. So we tracked it into our fair share of professors that we didn't know were professors until after we had talked to them for quite a while, multiple visits. But I mean, we left all on good terms. But we knew where Prince William lived, because there was a certain street, and it wasn't that far from the train station, and we'd walk down it quite frequently, and you would see the MI5 uniformed people in their car in front of his flat. And I'm sure there were MI6 people around that were, plain clothes. So, I mean, it was not hard to know where he lived. So, another funny thing about St. Andrews, tracking in St. Andrews is difficult because probably a third of the houses there in St. Andrews are vacant. And what it is you have rich Americans that, because the old course is owned by the city. And so you have rich Americans that buy a house in St. Andrews. So they are residents of the city and they can get super easy and basically free tea times at the old course. So you would tract and there's just no one in because no one lives there. It's a house that's owned by someone, but no one's ever there. But so one day we decided, okay, we're going to track this street of row houses. I think it was Hope Street was what it was called. And we're just going to do it, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we'll just do it. So we get to the door that we believed was his based on where the car was parked. And I kid you not, the door opens and there's like 5 women college students in there. And we're like, that's weird. But we ended up doing a doorstep first. And we gave a Book of Mormon to the person. And the person's name, as I recorded it in my journal, is Catherine. And they did live together at the time. So I'm pretty sure that I gave a doorstep first and a Book of Mormon to the Princess of Wales now?
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, I will tell you, so I don't want to get in trouble for this. Elder Lehman and I did have some schemes that we never acted on about, kidnapping Prince in the middle of the night, taking him to the North Sea, baptizing him, and then when he becomes king, the official religion of the UK becomes. Never acted on it. It was just the thought, that pesky little thing called free agency and stuff that didn't really factor in, but it was a thought, right? But I mean, I love that area. It was definitely an amazing experience. I was actually with Trevor Watson for 4.5 months before I was with, and I trained Elder Lehman, David Lehman, for 3 months. So I was there for about 7.5 months. It was awesome. Good times, really different from Glasgow. After that, I served for 6 weeks in East Kilbride with Greg Slater, another amazing, just so much fun to be with him. And then my next companion was Kevin Nelson. Again, coolest guy, super awesome. Really enjoyed my time with him. And then after that, I went zone leader in Irvin in the coastal zone. I will tell you, Trevor and I were kind of, when we were companions, I challenged him to send a tie. I don't know if I challenged him or we came up with it again together, but we did challenge, we did have a S.E.M tie sent to his dad. So if you go back and you look at the 2002 statistical report, his dad is wearing an S.E.M tie. So just a shout out there.
Sweet.
But yeah, so coastal zone, Tori Given was my companion. He was a good guy. Had a few little headbutts there. I think at that time, did you guys have the co-zone leaders? In your time where the zone would have 2 zone, it would be a companionship and they were zone leaders.
Yeah, that's the way it was the whole time, I think.
Yeah. So that was a little bit getting used to. During that time, I actually had to go and resolve an issue in Stranraer. So I spent, I think it was about a month with Michael Somer from South Africa, kind of getting a missionary in a not great situation with a member of the church that needed to be separated. So I spent a little bit of time in Stranraer. That was awesome. Enjoyed going down to the southernmost point of Scotland and seeing the Isle of Man and Ireland. it was tempting. They had the catamaran to Ireland, that you would see every day, and you're just like, oh, that would be awesome. But I mean, I was a zone leader. I couldn't do
They
that.
wouldn't have let you back over, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then after that, I went to Motherwell, so back to the Glasgow area as zone leader. And I served with Chad Van Leuven. Had a lot of fun with him, and had a really cool experience with him. Tracting one day, we're in a close, and I think it was a 3 or 4 story, block of flats, and we ring the doorbell, and the lights flashed. Didn't make any noise, but the lights flashed, and a guy comes to the door, and he's deaf, and that was a first for me, right? But he let us in. I met this guy named Alex McPhee. He wasn't born deaf, but there was like a meningitis outbreak in the 50s or something. And he got meningitis, and it caused deafness. But we started teaching him, and I know you guys have talked a little bit about. So definitely, when I got in the mission, it was memorization. I've got all the, master teacher memorization, and I think for about the first year, it was definitely, you're going to memorize the 6 discussions. You're going to go through the 6 discussions in order. If you need to go back, which we did a lot, and we'd do other discussions and things like that. But we got that kind of teach by the Spirit, which was, okay, you can teach it in any order. You can use the discussions as the basis point for the principles that you need to teach. But use the Spirit if you need to teach about the restoration, if you need to teach about the plan of salvation first, things like that. So I really, really enjoyed that, the freedom of doing that. And I will tell you, the ability not to religiously live by the discussion manuals was very helpful in teaching Alex McPhee, because we did destroy a few discussion manuals in the process of teaching him. We would cut them up and say, right. So, because I don't know British Sign Language, and my hand gets really tired after writing for so long. And I just remember it was the hardest thing, because he was Catholic. It was, I think we took, it was probably 45 minutes trying to get him to understand that prayers are not like memorized. So we'd be like, would you like to say a prayer? And then he would, because he could speak a little, right? And it would just be the Lord's Prayer. And we're like, no, like, no. But, we finally got through, and then we started teaching him, and it was just an amazing experience, because we got him to church, and we found out that, like, in like the early 90s, the Glasgow Stake had actually had a stake sponsored come and learn British Sign Language program that they did. And there was a sister that was in the stake. Her name was Sister Buckle. And she said, like, she felt prompted that she needed to do that in the early 90s, like 10 years before, 10 or 12 years before. And she went and she took the classes, and I think it was like 2 or 3 years that they did it. And she did everything that the church offered. And but she felt like she was impressed to do that. She didn't know why. She actually when I was there, she worked for a school for the deaf. So she'd actually kind of used that introduction, learned British Sign Language, and did that for her job. But when our ward found out we were teaching someone that was deaf, they knew that there was someone in the stake that could help. So she came in, and she was just a godsend, right? So she could come in and she could communicate with him and teach him the lessons. I remember, and you know what? It actually might have been. It was General Conference. It was October General Conference that we brought him, and my companion and I took turns trying to write General Conference, because they didn't have the closed captioning. We asked. So like, you're like writing, trying to get it down, and you'd be like, you'd have to switch off every talk. And I think that's how, like, people knew that we needed help. So she came in, and I didn't know any of this. And Alex, he got baptized. And at his baptism, she gave a talk and she told us this thing. And she was like, I know now why I felt impressed to do this sign language class like 12 years ago.
Wow.
And I got that impression. It's so that I could be here for this experience, and this person needed me. And it was just, it's like blew my mind. Just an amazing experience. So we found Elder Van Leuven, and I found him. And then my second to last companion was Dennis Grenavicius. Green apple juice is what people used to call him. I think he was like the third guy baptized in Lithuania after they opened it up. Like, and the second one was like his mom. Amazing dude. Love that guy. And it was just, so at that point I had 3 months left of my mission, and President Vriens is like, yeah, Dennis Grenavicius is coming, or Elder G. And I'm like, so we came out together. I got 3 months left of my mission. He's not extending. I'm not extending. This is going to be interesting. But it was cool. It was awesome being with him. And that was kind of when the Alex McPhee thing was happening. So that was an amazing thing. So then the next moves comes around. We each both have 6 weeks left. Neither of us move. We're like, President, what's going on? And I mean, we probably had 25, 30 people on the teaching pool. It was not, it would have been, I had concerns about how the handoff was going to go with 2 new, zone leaders coming in. So it goes. Finally, 2 weeks before I leave, President calls up and says, Elder Anderson, and I totally thought that he was going to go because I had a driver's license and he didn't, and we had a car. So I'm like, he's going to go. Nope. President's like, you're going to Knightswood for the last 2 weeks of your mission with Elder Kevin Anderson. So it was Elder Anderson and Elder Anderson for 2 weeks in Knightswood. And man, that was a challenging 2 weeks. I mean, at the end of your mission, especially when you got a pretty good teaching pool, you want to really enrich those ties and those people that you've found and kind of get a nice send off. And I couldn't do that. That was a hard 2 weeks for me, but I did enjoy Kevin. He was a cool guy. I know there's been a little bit, I've heard his name thrown around, a little bit older, getting on his mission. But yeah, definitely a cool, fun guy to do that. And then, I came home, and yeah, that was it. It was just an amazing, I saw a lot of success in the baptisms area, but it was just the people, like just amazing people. And I think I was saying before, like my mission gave me the skills that I've been able to use in all aspects of my life, right? You think about what other thing is allowing you to be in such a personal environment as someone's home, and learning about just the social aspects of how to parent, how to interact with people, how you just live, how you keep your home, all that stuff. You learn that on a mission, right? And then you learn how to talk to people. You learn how to interact. It was an amazing experience. I loved it. For me, I look back at it, and I like to think about my mission as a spiritual roller coaster, right? You've got the highs are super high, the lows are super low. But it's an uncomplicated like break in my life. I think about, like, I didn't have to worry about school. I didn't have to worry about like really family stuff. I knew what I was supposed to be doing every day. And it was just, in one sense, it was very simple. So just, It was a great time. I loved it.
Yeah, those 2 years are really set aside
Yeah.
from everything else.
Yeah.
So we've asked everyone. We'll ask you. You served with the Wilkinsons and the Vriens. Do you have any specific memories about the mission presidents and their
So
wives?
President Wilkinson, awesome guy. He had a good sense of humor too. Like, I think it was a little bit before my time, but any person that can put an elder Pitt and an elder Sweat together as a companionship, which did happen, kudos, man. Like, that's awesome. No, he's a smaller guy, but just a spiritual giant. And President Vriens too, just the love that you feel. And I didn't spend really any time in the Edinburgh zone, but there were a few times being at the mission home, as a zone leader, is seeing a little bit more of the mission president, and just seeing, that love. There's a weight that goes with it too. Like, so there were some times that you could see the weight. You could see, like, I don't know everything that he's dealing with, but I can tell it's quite a bit, right? And yet he's just, the love was awesome. So I mean, I have in-laws in the St. George area, so and it's not every time I'm there, but quite frequently I'll reach out to the Wilkinsons and catch up with them and everything. And then, President Vriens coming in, like, huge guy, just that handshake, the hug, the famous Elder Anderson, he always, the famous elder whomever or sister whomever, that was his catchphrase that I got.
Yep.
And yeah, I think he did things a little differently, but there was still the love, there was still, the expectations. Talked a little bit about, the final interview, go home and get married before you get into any trouble. I lasted 2 years. I was pretty happy with that, being a little off on my own. I was trying to think of. I don't know. Do you guys know Kenton Carish, Elder Carish?
Yeah, I was his last companion.
Oh, so yeah, so he went to University of Nevada, Reno too. So I didn't know him before the mission. So he's from the Reno area. I grew up near there, but we definitely interacted quite a bit after, post mission.
Yeah,
going to school. I ran into him, I think, in 2017. Him and his wife. He just had twins a year or two ago. So
we're trying to get him on here.
Do it. So. Yeah, he's a cool guy. But yeah, no, I mean, love Scotland. It's a great place. Great.
Well, Robert, you shared some amazing experiences, and you had quite an amazing journey through Scotland. So thank you for sharing. You mentioned some great people in your companions and Elder Carish. Is there any other missionaries that, as they're listening to this, you can call out and invite them to participate in this? We'd love to have them.
So yeah, a lot of the ones I mentioned before: Trevor Watson, Dennis Grenavicius. I was his companion for 6 weeks. Elder G, yeah. Greg. Oh man, I don't know if I laughed more than when I was with Greg Slater. That guy. Just a cool guy. So he'd be good. Kevin Nelson. Yeah, definitely. Great men, great people to be around, great experiences. I know because while you're on the mission, there's hard times and, like, there's lows. And I just always remember thinking, Elder Anderson, you are in Scotland. Think of all those people you went to high school with. They're not in Scotland. They're not doing these amazing things. You are, like, so that I think that was why I relied that on a lot, on the lows, but just, yeah, good times.
That's a great perspective. I don't think I ever thought about many people apart from, my close friends, not being in Scotland with me. But you're right. It was a unique experience that only us that were there had the opportunity to enjoy. And the people that we served obviously have made a lasting impact on us. So that's really amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you taking time and sharing your experiences. And again, all those that have been called out by Robert, make sure that you get in touch with us. You can do so by sending us an email at S.E.M podcast at 51spylaw.com, or you
So
can take the route that Robert did. Go ahead.
So I want to thank you guys, right? So this has been awesome. Listening to this, I want to thank not only you guys, but I want to thank your wives, because I can imagine this is more than a little bit of time, and your kids. So I think this is a good opportunity and a good forum to remember things. And I think if we don't remember a lot of these, because I still go, like, one of the good things about moving not one of the good things, but one of the things about moving so much is I've had plenty of opportunities to give sacrament talks, and I can share some of these amazing experiences on my mission without doing it multiple times to the same people, other than my wife. She's sick of it. But I think remembering these experiences in the crazy chaos that we call life, when you have kids and a job and a mortgage and XYZ, is super valuable to do that. So I want to thank you guys and your wives and your kids for the time you guys are doing this. Thanks.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's like Jack said, it really is one of those things that it's a true labor of love. It's been unbelievable to connect with people. Like, we're sitting here talking with you, Robert, and we didn't interact with you in Scotland, but yet we're connected.
Yeah.
In more ways than one, with regards to the people we knew, the areas we served. All those things are just, it's fun to listen to your stories and what your era of Scotland was to you, and and then for us to see that evolution just as well. So thank you again. But yeah, we really appreciate your time. We love you, and hope that you'll share this. We'll get it out here probably within the next week or so. So we'll let you know, and you can share it amongst those that you're still connected with. And again, that invitation is open to anyone who wants to come on. Visit our website at 51spylaw.com and do what Robert did. And he filled out a contact sheet. That's how we got in touch with him. So we appreciate you going out on that limb and reaching out. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, Robert. Well, thank you again. We love you. We'll certainly talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your night.
Love you too. Ta.
All right, but ta.